You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Paul Brophy. I'm joined here outside Leinster House by Fianna TD for Carlow Kilkenny, Peter Chap Cleere. Deputy Cleere, you're very welcome again to the Irish Political Roundup.
Yeah, delighted to be here, Paul. Good afternoon to you and all your viewers.
Yeah, it's been a very, very busy number of months. You are currently the Fianna spokesperson on agriculture. There's been a lot of talk about potentially CAP reform, and you were in Brussels recently discussing that with your MEPs.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues out there on the agricultural side of things, Paul. Obviously, being spokesperson for agriculture, we're at the front end of things, and there's a lot of issues out there in terms of TB and Mercosur and the nitrous derogation and the upcoming CAP, and there's challenges in different sectors, tillage, etc. So there's an awful lot of issues out there, but there's a lot of positivity in the agricultural sector as well. It's a huge sector in Irish economy. There's 170,000 people employed in the agricultural sector. It's worth about 20 billion of our national exports are in the agricultural side of things, 10% of our total exports. So it's a huge factor in terms of the economy, but also what it does for rural Ireland in terms of the contribution to make to be the local schools or local GA clubs can't be underestimated either. So,
and there has been some talk about the CAP budget being mixed in with other funds, and now that is potentially going to cause problems, and I'm sure that's something that you're dead against.
Yeah, absolutely, and discussions and negotiations are ongoing on that. We're very fortunate in Ireland that we have the presidency of the European Council in the second half of 2026. So there is a proposal out there at the moment. Do I agree with everything that's in it? No. But we have to fight to make sure that the Irish farmers get a good deal, because our farming situation in Ireland is different than what, for example, most of Europe would be. So we just need to make sure that the Ireland position is put forward very strongly, that there's enough funding that's there, and that our economy can benefit from a really increased CAP in terms of the funding streams that are going to be made available to it.
And I suppose also with it that you have the nitrates derogation. It is very important that Ireland retains that derogation, particularly for our dairy farmers.
Yeah, and I mean the derogation as it stands right now today is to finish on the 31st of December. It is my view from the conversations I've had in Brussels with various different commissioners is that we will get a derogation extension. The terms of that extension, I don't know yet. We don't know yet, but we're fighting really hard to get a derogation specifically for Ireland as a standalone case, because we have very much a grassland agricultural situation compared to, say, Finland, which would have maybe only 2 months of the year out in the grass, whereas in Ireland we have maybe 10 months of the year in the grass. So you're not comparing like for like with a lot of the European countries the way how we do things here in Ireland. So we will be looking for a specific derogation for Ireland. As I said to you, the details of that haven't been announced yet, but I'm very hopeful that we'll see something in the next couple of weeks on that.
And then there's also the Mercosur agreement, which is pretty close to completion. You were at the ploughing championships obviously recently. There are a lot of beef farmers who are concerned that this agreement would see an influx of a lot of beef from South America that wouldn't be of the same standard to what we have here in Ireland and the rest of the European Union.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of standards, Paul. I mean, the Mercosur deal, obviously from an agricultural perspective, I'm focusing on, but I suppose from a European perspective, there's a lot of positives come from Mercosur as well. But on the agricultural side of things, we need to make sure that there's fair play involved, because the standards that an Irish farmer has to meet for its beef versus the South American has to be able to compare like with like. Now, I did meet Commissioner Hansen in Brussels recently, and there is a specific fund that's set aside on the beef side of things to make sure that from a competitiveness, that competitiveness is there. So you might recall in the new proposed CAP, there's a 450 million budget that in previous years would have been put aside for things like flood relief or forest fires. That now can be put aside to make sure from a competitiveness that the beef prices are going to be maintained at the level they should be at. But you have to be able to compare like with like. The quality has to be there, and there's work to be done on that side, Paul.
And it's actually, from talking to beef farmers, this year has been an excellent year, and you want to maintain that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's Ireland is agriculture is so important to us here. We've had a good year this year, but there's years where we haven't had so good years. So I suppose like anything, it's like when your club is playing in the hurling and you win a county final. You want to be enjoying the good years, because there's plenty of lean years and tough years, and it's the same in the agricultural side of things. Beef is very, very good at the moment in terms of the prices, but with that then comes additional costs as well in terms of buying back in, etc. So there's pros and cons too, but it is a good year. But I suppose from when you look at an agricultural side of things, you want to be looking over a 5-year term, and it has been challenged over a couple of years as well,
And from a Carlow Kilkenny point of view, the last time we were up here in Leinster House, you had a delegation of a community group who are campaigning to make the N25 safer in Kilkenny. There was a meeting there during the week. There has been some developments in the last number of weeks.
Yeah, I have to say that committee, and I just want to put on the record here, the work that committee has done is absolutely phenomenal. And to be fair, there's been more work done in the last 4 months than the previous 4 years. Let's call a spade a spade. And most of it's down to that committee. And I suppose there are additional measures that have now been put in place in terms of the speed limit now has been reduced in the N25. So the speed limit is reduced from 100 back to 80, which will make a difference and will save lives. The traffic cameras, speed cameras are now going up. There's some work has been done in terms of cutting back sightlines for one of the, I think there's 14 exits off the N25. There's been work done there. So there's a huge amount of work has been done, and there's a bit of there's additional road works being done in terms of making the road safer as well. And I suppose that's part A, and part two of that, part B of that project then is actually getting the motorway and getting the bypass. That's a bigger project. So that committee, we would have met with Darragh O'Brien. I would have facilitated that meeting. It was really positive, really constructive, and there was a commitment there to fund phase 3 and 4 to allow this project go to the next stage.
And there's 7 phases in total. Is that something that should be looked at in the near future, about when we come to these infrastructural projects, that the speed in which they can be delivered, needs to be looked at? I know there needs to be planning and consultation, but you could be looking at years before you actually see diggers on site.
And I'm on the same page. It's really frustrating for me as, I suppose, a politician, an elected representative, the speed at which some of these projects take. Now, I know obviously there's engineering aspects to it, and there's planning aspects to it, and there's potential compulsory purchase orders. There's a lot of work to be done, but the speed for a project to get over the line, to take 5, 6, 7 years is not acceptable in my view. I spoke in the Dáil yesterday about flood relief schemes. And I'll give you an example of Graignamanagh, where I'm from, and we had a flooding incident in 2016. It was acknowledged that there would be funding made available in 2018, and planning is actually only going forward now in the next couple of weeks to actually formally put forward a planning place. So 10 years on from the flood event happening, we're only going to the planning stage. So it's way too slow. And that's the one thing I suppose that's frustrating for me as a newly elected TD is I suppose the red tape and the bureaucracy in terms of getting some of these capital projects over the line is very frustrating.
Absolutely. And men's health is something that you're also very passionate about as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose Fianna Fáil have been hugely trying to promote health in general, and men's health in particular. We have for the first time ever a junior minister for mental health in terms of Mary Butler, and it's an area that I suppose we're trying to promote, that it's okay to not be okay, and to mind your health and mind your mind. And as I suppose as a fella, you tend to not talk about things, and you tend to kind of just bottle it up, and it's just, we're just trying to get the message out that it's really important to go and talk, to get help, to get assistance, and just to talk to somebody and make sure that you're minding yourself. I mean, like if you were to your car, for it to run, you need to put in diesel, and you need to make sure it's safe, whatever. And if you're not fueling your mind the way you're fueling your car, if your car breaks down, you can get a new one. But your body is your body, and your mind is your mind. You need to protect it, you need to mind it.
And I suppose that also, to protect your mind, you need to build resilience. So, yes, acknowledging you have a problem or difficulty is one step, but building that resilience is so important.
Yeah, and the key thing here is that there is help out there. There is help out there, and there's so many organisations that are only willing and able to help you. And I suppose the first step is just to pick up the phone and make that call, and call the organisation themselves directly, or call your local politician, your councillor, your TD. We better send you in the right direction, because we're very fortunate in CarlowKIlkenny. There are some fantastic services there, but I suppose the first part of that is putting your hand up and recognising that that it's okay to get that help and have that conversation.
Absolutely. And the budget is going to happen next week. I'm sure we're all reading lots of different things of what could and could be. From your point of view, what would you like to see contained in the budget next week? Yeah,
there's a lot. There's a huge amount of stuff. That's a big question now, because there's an awful lot of issues. But I suppose what I would say is I'm really happy in terms of the NDP, in terms of the capital infrastructure programme, separate to the budget, in terms of the projects that we're going to get delivered in Carlow-Kilkenny, such as the N24, the N25, the Kilkenny Ring Road. So I'm really pleased that those capital projects are going to be complete. In terms of the actual budget, in the CARES is a big one. I mean, there's a specific measure in the programme for government that we will reduce the means test for CARES allowance over the lifetime of this government. So how far we'll go on that is a big thing. Another issue which has come up quite a lot is the issue of the college fees.
Yes.
And there was one-off measures that were put aside for the last number of years.
Yes.
And I would hope to see permanent measures put in place, rather than this every year wondering, are we going to get a rebate of 1,000 or 500 or 50, number of the case may be. So we need to make really inroads in that. But there's so many issues out there. We need to make sure that the tillage sector is looked after.
Yes.
We spoke about beef and dairy, and they're having a really, really good year, but the tillage sector is in a bit of trouble, and we need to make sure that there's a specific budget for them as well. So there's so many issues.
And succession planning for farmers is a massive issue as well.
Yeah, well, you saw, I think, recently that from an agricultural perspective, most of our farmers are over 6 years of age.
Yeah.
And of our younger farmers, a lot of them have dual income, so they're working, as teachers or working in the private sector, and then they're farming part time. So, the average size of a farm in Ireland is about 37 hectares. And I suppose we need to make sure that the viability of that farm, if somebody wants to farm, that it's viable to do so. And what we're seeing at the moment is, for younger people that are getting into farming, that they're doing it, but it's a pastime hobby as opposed to an actual enterprise business. And we need to make sure that the young person that wants to get involved in farming, that it's a viable lifestyle for him and his family to do so in.
And Deputy Chap Cleere, your offices are open now in Kilkenny. One in prime location of Upper Patrick Street in Kilkenny, right next door to Lodge Strip Shop.
Yeah.
And Mullinlavat is open as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, look, we wanted to make sure that one of the things we said when we were campaigning for the elections, that we wanted to make sure that we were visible on the ground and that it was accessible to get to us. So we've opened our office in Kilkenny. It's been operational since last March. We only officially opened there a couple of weeks ago. Deputy Leader Jack Chambers came down and opened it for us, so we were thrilled with that. And we also have an office in Mullinlavat, which is actually operational at the moment. We're just waiting for signage to go up over the doors, but we're actually open every Thursday and Friday in Mullinlavat as well. And obviously in Graigley, we have our office there, where we do a clinic once a week as well. So we just want to make sure we have a presence right around Kilkenny and Carlow, that we're accessible. And we have a fantastic team with us as well. So, but it's very, very busy, and there's a huge amount of work to be done at local level. Very fortunate, some great councils as well that we're working with. So it's fantastic. It's been a brilliant year, but it takes a lot to get your operation up and running. So, for example, if I was re-elected in 5 years' time, all that would be in place, and the wheels just keep going. Whereas when you're starting off, you're trying to find a premise, you're trying to find a location, you're trying to get your team in place, and there's a huge amount of work involved in that.
Well, you have a great team in place. You have your former county councillor, Matt Dawn. You have the two ladies in the office.
Yeah.
And you also have councillors Jenny Slattery and Joe Sheridan.
Absolutely. So we have a great council team. We've Jenny and Joe and Mick McCarthy and John Coon. So we've great councillors that are working with us. And obviously Matt Doran is integral to the office, and with Trina and Caroline in there as well, and Jenny in the Mullinlavat office. So we have a really, really good team. But the volume of work is huge, and I suppose I want to make sure, as I said to you, that we're visible, that we're present, and that we're accessible to the people of CarlowKIlkenny, and the team help us achieve that. So look, it's been brilliant, but as I said to you, there's a lot of work to be done. We've met a lot of people, and we've solved a lot of problems. We have a lot more problems to solve for people, and we're going to work as hard as we can to get resolutions to all those local issues, and obviously on the national side of things then, to make sure that we're the voice of that CarlowKIlkenny doesn't get left behind up here.
Yes, and so what you're doing, you have the team in CarlowKIlkenny, and they're feeding things back, what is happening locally to you, to bring up to the door nationally.
Absolutely. So I always said that there's two elements to the job. You've got the micro stuff, which is in Kilkenny, which is your day-to-day stuff, your bread and butter, you're meeting people, you're doing jobs, you're making reps, and you're hopefully getting resolutions and helping people. That's the Kilkenny element, and the Carlow element of the job, the local side. But then the national element, we say the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. We're up in Dublin. We're fighting for bus, school transport. We're fighting for, to more better regulation on vapes. We're fighting for sports capital grants. We're fighting for the region. We're fighting for transport for the N24, 25. We're fighting for the farmers of CarlowKIlkenny. So all the issues we get locally, we then have an opportunity up here in Dublin to raise all those issues, because what's happening in Kilkenny is different than what's happening in Dublin, and what's happening in Carlow is different than what's happening in Galway. So I need to make sure that I'm that voice for Kilkenny and Carlow for the southeast area.
And you know me, and you'll also be fighting and be the voice
defence force. Yeah. No, in fairness, you've nothing. You're consistent, Roisin. So, in fairness to Defence Force, and we have had good investment in the James Stephens Barracks, and I'm really excited to see the upcoming budget in terms of what we have to do in defence, because security now is very front and centre in terms of what's happening on a national scale. And I suppose we need to make sure that Ireland is playing our part in terms of that security piece. And we have a long tradition of peacekeeping in this country, and we've got fantastic defence forces, and that's the key thing here. It's not an army, it's defence forces, and they do a brilliant job. and they're crucial to Kilkenny and to the economy in Kilkenny as well. So I would like to see, and I've lobbied very, very hard for additional funding from both a capital and from a day-to-day perspective in terms of our defence forces and in terms of that security aspect. And whilst we're on security, with my agricultural hat on, like security is really important in terms of the defences, and actually security in terms of food security is every bit as important, because before you do anything on the defences, if you haven't got food to feed your population, you're in trouble. And we're in a situation in Ireland where we have a population of maybe 5 or 5.5 million, but we produce enough food for 45 million. So we're in a really strong place. A lot of our European counterparts wouldn't be half near as good as in terms of their food production. So we just need to make sure that food production is there and that viability is there. But we need to protect our people as well.
When we think of food security, not just agriculture, a lot of people, like local people, don't realise that the fisheries is also part of the agriculture as well.
Yeah.
We may be inland in Carlow Kilkenny, but we really do need to, as you said, secure our food supply and our food security, because we're an island at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with more. And as I said, there's a great tradition of fishing in the marine in Ireland, and obviously being an island gives us a lot of access to the fish side of things. So look, between the agriculture and fisheries, I'd bundle them in together in terms of the food piece. But we just need to make sure that they're adequately funded, that we can continue to grow into the future, and that we can be an exporter, and that it can be, it's not just we're producing enough for the island, we have to be able to produce enough for ourselves, but obviously from an export perspective then it's worth a huge amount to the economy. As I said, 20 billion euro last year of our exports was on the agricultural side of things, which is huge. 10% of our total exports were agriculture.
You were talking earlier on about bringing the imports, cheaper imports from different countries.
Yeah, in terms of standards. Yeah.
So, but the Irish people, we want to know when we're buying our meat, we're supporting our local farmers and fishermen.
Yeah, and I mean, all you have to do is look at on board Bia, in terms of, when you go to buy a sausage, you go to buy a rasher, on board Bia means 100% Irish, you know where it's coming from. And I think that labelling element is really, really important. What I also think is that if we are going to advance this Mercosur deal, we need to absolutely make sure that the standards that are imposed in Ireland, which are quite high right across Europe in terms of that piece, that they're on a level playing field with the standards that are in South America, say in terms of Mercosur and Brazil, just to give an example. So there's a lot of work to be done on that to make sure that the beef that potentially could be imported is of the same standard and has had to go through the same rigour as the Irish beef, for example.
But the Irish people, we don't want to be eating meat from South America. So we want to be supporting across the road from Guaranteed Irish.
Yeah.
We want to support our local farmers and eat our local meat that is...
absolutely. And I suppose, look, we're a huge exporter of beef. So we produce enough beef in this country for ourselves, but we do export a lot of beef into Europe. So as I said, from an Irish perspective, agriculture is huge in terms of the viability piece. But from a European perspective, when I met the Latvian ambassador yesterday, and 56% of the population of the size of Latvia is actually forestry. Right. So their capacity to I suppose make a contribution to agriculture is a lot lower, because almost 2/3 of their land mass is forestry.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting, that it's what we have in Ireland is actually completely different to what some of our European counterparts would be experiencing. You go to a place like Finland, and we met the Finnish speaker over in Europe there as well on our trip. And as I said to you, maybe at best for 6 weeks in the year, their cows are out on the grass. So for 6 weeks, and in Ireland you'd be looking at maybe 10 months on the grass, whatever. So it's completely different. We have a grassland model here versus, so they look at Europe as a whole, but Ireland is completely different than a lot of Europe because of our climate and because of our tradition and history in terms of the agriculture side as well.
We don't mind sharing our beautiful food.
Once we have enough for ourselves first, we can share away after that. Yeah.
Well, definitely, Chap Cleere, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to the Irish Political Roundup, to Paul and myself.
Thanks, Paul.
We really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you again anytime.